Okay, so it is day 3 on the farm now. It's so cold, my brain is still trying to switch on. Day 3 on the farm, and again it looks like we have a really beautiful day. And for once I think we have a bit of a plan for today. The kind of hunting we do on this farm is usually quite opportunistic, simply because you never know where you're going to find specific animals. So if you try and target them, you may end up failing. But there is one animal that we have a bit of knowledge about, and that's the ground squirrels. We know that they might be on a specific area of the farm, so we want to take the air gun out and try and shoot some. I've really been trying very hard to get some air gun hunting done over the past couple of days, but it is very difficult because this is such an open area, and because it's so dry at the moment, we have to really trek really far and try and get close to whatever we're shooting, and that's very, very difficult. So the air gun stuff is also quite opportunistic. We got those dussies down yesterday, which was fantastic, but we do want to get some air gun hunting done on the ground squirrels. So the plan for today is to head out as soon as it starts warming up and as soon as we've had breakfast with our rifles, and just go spend some time at one of the lands where the farmer wants some baboon shot. There's been a lot of baboons that have been really causing trouble around the sheep. They actually kill the lambs and just drink the milk out of the lamb's stomach, so they've been a big problem. And as soon as we've done that, we're going to get the impact out and head down to another field and see if we can get some ground squirrels on the scope camera. That'll be fantastic. So join us, let's see what happens.
Perfect timing. I was about to bring you some coffee. How did you sleep?
Alright, but I had too much tea before I went to bed, so I had to pee 4 times.
Our hunting begins along the banks of the Great Fish River today, on a strip of land that the baboons have claimed as their playground. We move in slowly to look for movement, but this time the fields are empty, and so we put the centerfire rifles away and turn all our attention towards the ground squirrels. On most of the farm, the ground squirrels aren't a problem, but here on the cultivated parts of the farm, they have really become an issue and need to be regularly controlled. As you can see, this land is much greener than the rest of the farm, and this unlimited food and water source is what stops the ground squirrel numbers from regulating themselves. In the wild, droughts and food shortages would naturally control their numbers, but over here they never run out of food or water, and so intervention is needed. A flight over the land clearly shows patches of ground squirrel damage, and holes can clearly be seen wherever a colony has settled in, so we have our work cut out for us. My weapon of choice today is the old faithful FX Impact. You've seen a lot of this gun on my channel, but I like to stick to a winning formula, and this time we have some serious upgrades with a Nightforce SHV scope, a side shot magazine, and a new scope cam setup. After waiting for some woolly traffic to pass by, we very quickly have our first squirrel of the day. Okay, well, things didn't turn out exactly as we wanted earlier with the baboons on the lands. We drove all the way out there, but there were no baboons, so we've come straight back here to these fields where we know the ground squirrels like to be. And just as we came in here, we saw one over there. Had to wait for a few sheep and goats to move out the way, but just held probably about half a mil off to the left of his head and half a mil up. Pellet killed in for a perfect headshot. And I'll probably put the scope cam on later so you can see 1 or 2 slow-mo shots, but let's keep moving and see if we can get more squirrels. We spot a few more squirrels soon afterwards, but they're full of energy as usual, and estimating a hold for elevation and wind proves to be very difficult. This one is from 90 meters, a challenging shot that didn't work out quite as I'd hoped. He was perhaps a little further than I thought. The pellet drops a few centimeters low, but also gets carried by the wind more than expected. It's a body shot that will kill him within a minute or so, but not the ideal head or heart shot that I wanted. I mentioned the new scope cam setup I have. Actually, well, I have more than one new scope cam setup, but this is the one I'm using today. The quality of this camera is absolutely fantastic. It does up to 1,000 frames a second, actually pretty good 1,000 frames a second. I'm on 250 frames a second at the moment, but what's nice about this camera is it's got a little electronic viewfinder. So if I put my eye against the viewfinder, I can almost aim like a normal gun and shoot like this. I can get a very clear picture of what I'm filming, and I also don't get any glare like I get from the screen. So this is a really nice setup for this kind of shooting, where we're in the bright light and we actually have to look at the screen the whole time when we're shooting to get it on camera. So I'm probably going to be using this for the rest of the day, but let's see what else we can get. It's very difficult to actually get within range of these ground squirrels, because when they see the truck coming, they're down their hole. So we'll see what we can do. Here's a typical example of what happens if you take too long with a shot. These two squirrels are a long way off, and so we wanted to calculate the hold perfectly, but they're down their holes within a few seconds. Thankfully this time we get a second chance as one pokes his head out again, but it's a miss.
Right.
We had ranged this one at about 100 yards, but we either measured the range wrong or had some turbulent winds to deal with, because the shot passes way low and way off to the right. The monkeys decide to show up, and we really tempted to blast them with the rifles, but we decided against it for the sake of the squirrels. The supersonic crack of the 260s would more than likely scare all the squirrels down their holes, and thankfully we were patient, because right around the next corner we come face to face with another squirrel. The image is so nice and crisp through the Sony RX100, and he bites the dust really hard. Okay, I just shot a squirrel there at really close, probably about 20 meters or so, just right in the head. So that was a nice and easy shot, but for the rest of the shooting it's really difficult. We've got probably about a 10 mile an hour wind on average blowing here, and it's not incredibly consistent either. So when you're shooting with something like an air gun, which is just really bad in the wind, you really need to have some experience with shooting in conditions like this. Now, I would say I'm fairly experienced. I know there's some people who'd be way better than me in these conditions, but if you don't have any experience, then you literally have to get a wind measurement for every single shot, type it in your ballistics calculator, and get a solution. And doing that is so time consuming that you would never get any squirrels. So I've had to take a lot of kind of calculated guesses for the longer shots, and most of them have been off. But if I had no experience shooting in the wind, they would have been even more off. I'm all set up with the right gear, so if I miss, I've got no excuses, it's my fault. But we're probably about halfway around the field now, so we'll probably just continue on around there and hopefully see one or two more. Our search for squirrels is momentarily put on hold when we spot a pied starling about 85 meters away. This is a pest species, so I take the shot, and again elevation is perfect, but the wind gets the better of me. Thankfully, I'm given another opportunity from closer shortly afterwards, and I make this one count. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say to me, why do you shoot those birds? Do you shoot everything you see? No, I don't shoot everything I see. I actually filmed those glossy starlings this morning. Those are the birds that we like to have around. We don't shoot them. So we don't just shoot any species we see. There's certain species that are a problem, and those witgat spreeuws or pied starlings are one of the problem birds. You often see them around the feed areas where the animals feed, and they come in big flocks and they eat all the seeds and the nutritious parts of the food from the supplemental food that they feed the cattle. So they're just one of those species that the farmers don't want around, and so when we saw one, we were very quick to take a shot at it. At this point, with a fairly low success rate on the squirrels, we decide to move to a different spot. These fields are massive, and there are plenty of different ground squirrel colonies, but one of the fields is full of sheep at the moment, so our options are a little bit limited. Eventually though, we come to a dry patch that was a real ground squirrel hotspot when we came here the previous year, and again it didn't disappoint. We soon bag another squirrel. I'd say this was probably the best shot of the day, considering how little time we had to take the shot. This guy was on the move, but Luke gave me a range of 70 meters the moment he stopped, and I knew my gun well enough to be able to hold for wind and elevation and just shoot. It's a perfect shot in the neck, and he's dead on the spot. I take another shot shortly afterwards at about 95 meters, but this one is right over his head, and he lives to see another day. Right, well here's one of the squirrels I've just shot. For those of you who haven't seen ground squirrel hunting before, this might give you a good idea of their size. They're quite dense little creatures. They look very small, but when you pick them up, they're heavier than you expect them to be. It's probably because their nuts are so massive. But this one, it looks like I went in right at the back of his head on the one side and out the back of his shoulder on the other. So it would have been through the brain and through the spine, dead on the spot. We're coming to the end of the field now, so I'm not sure how many more opportunities we'll have.
Oh. Goodness. Let's go sit on the road and dust them.
See all those monkeys there? I can bet you that those have just come back from trying to raid some of the houses there. There's some houses there where some of the farm workers live. They keep a lot of chickens, they keep some geese, some ducks, and I'm guessing that those monkeys have just come back from trying to go steal their eggs. So if we get a chance later, we'll blast a few of them, but for now our focus is on the ground squirrels. We still have plenty of ground to cover, so we decide to try one more spot, and to our delight, there's a squirrel right out in the open about 60 meters away, just asking for some lead. Unfortunately, I pressed record a little bit late on the scope cam, and all it captures is some wriggling and another ground squirrel running for his life in the background. But thankfully we've got the other camera angle, and all that's left to do is to pick him up. With a fantastic morning of ground squirrel shooting behind us, we decide to turn our focus back towards the monkeys. It hasn't been long since we saw that massive troop crossing through the field earlier, so we head to where we last saw them, and lo and behold, there are some naughty grey faces poking out the trees. In the next video, we'll be continuing where we left off on this one and wrapping up a memorable week at Witmorskloof with a good afternoon of monkey shooting, a long-range gong session, and of course, an evening around the fire. I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, guys.